Imagine waking up. It's the dead of night. Your room is dark, but you feel like you're not alone. And there, in the corner, you see it. A silhouette, standing unnaturally still. It looks human-shaped, kind of, but it's blacker than black. No face, no features, your heart's pounding, right? Because this shadowy thing, it feels like it's watching you.
Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive with Mi Mind MashUps. We love exploring these fringes of perception and reality with you. Last time, we sort of dipped our toes into the Hat Man, Enigma, chillin' stuff. Today, we're going to broaden that out. We're looking at the whole realm of shadow people.
Right, and it's this huge question, isn't it? Are these things just tricks of the light, our minds playing games, or is it something more? Like, maybe something looking in from somewhere else?
Exactly. That's the core mystery. Are we talking about psychology, maybe a collective hallucination, or are these encounters hinting at something profound, like, I don't know, interdimensional beings, observers?
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to unpack what people actually report seeing. We'll look at how similar stories pop up across different cultures, which is fascinating. Then we'll tackle the science. What explanations does brain science offer? And finally, we'll venture into those more out there paranormal ideas.
It could be quite a journey.
Definitely. So if you're ready to explore the shadows with us, make sure you like, share, and subscribe or follow Mi Mind MashUps. Join the conversation and catch all our deep dives.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. What are shadow people, fundamentally?
Well, the basics are pretty consistent. People describe these dark, human-shaped silhouettes. They're not like your classic misty ghost, you know. These are usually described as jet black, solid-looking almost, but featureless. No face, no clothes you can make out, just a void shaped like a person.
Right, like a patch of shadow that somehow detached itself and started moving, with intent. And you mentioned subtypes.
Yeah, there seem to be common forms. Tall male figures are reported a lot, sometimes wearing like a trench coat or that wide-brimmed hat, the Hat Man figure we talked about.
Yes, the Hat Man. Very specific.
And then in some really unsettling accounts, people mention glowing red eyes, which just cranks the fear up to 11, obviously.
Absolutely. And what's really fascinating and kind of paradoxical is how they appear and disappear. You often hear they're fleeting, elusive. You glimpse them out of the corner of your eye, maybe. And the moment you try to focus, poof, they're gone.
But that's changing a bit, isn't it? I've heard more recent accounts where people say they do see them face on, staring right at them, sometimes for longer periods, even seeing those red eyes directly.
That's true. The nature of the report seems to be evolving, or maybe people are just more willing to share those direct confrontations now. But one thing that is consistent, that overwhelming feeling, intense dread, a chilling presence. It's almost a physical sensation for some.
So you've got this weird mix. On one hand, they feel solid. People say blacker than black, like a hole in reality, a solid presence. Some even say they block the view of things behind them like a physical object would.
But then, snap your fingers. They're gone. Vanished. Elusive. Slipping away.
Yeah.
That combination. Solid and fleeting.
Yeah.
It's what makes them so hard to pin down.
Exactly. If it's just in your head, why this specific contradictory description over and over? And if it's paranormal, well, how does that work? Appearing solid but not quite being there, it's baffling.
It really is. And it makes you wonder, is this a modern thing?
Yeah.
Or have people always seen shadows?
That's a great question, because when you look back, this idea of unseen, shadowy entities, it's everywhere. Ancient cultures, folklore, they all have stories.
Absolutely. It suggests this might be a fundamental part of the human experience, maybe interpreted differently depending on the time and place.
Okay, so give us some examples, like the Jinn in Islamic tradition.
Right, the Jinn, mentioned even before Islam and then in the Quran. They're spirits made of smokeless fire. Humans can't normally see them, but they can take different forms. They live in a kind of parallel world, a shadow world, and the name Jinn itself means to hide or be concealed. They're linked to nightmares, sometimes that heavy feeling of sleep paralysis too.
Fascinating. What about Japan?
In Japan, you have the Napraba, the faceless ghost. They look human at first, then they wipe their face clean, revealing just smooth skin. Super creepy. Mostly just meant to frighten people though, usually harmless, often as mischievous animal spirits in disguise.
Okay, creepy but harmless, unlike, say, the Tokoloshe from southern Africa.
The Tokoloshe, yeah, from Nguni folklore. A dwarf-like water spirit. Often seen as mischievous, sometimes downright evil. They can apparently turn invisible by drinking water or swallowing a pebble. Legend says you should put bricks under your bed legs to raise it up because they're short and supposedly can't reach you then. Good tip, maybe.
Maybe. Don't want any invisible dwarf spirits climbing into bed. And in the West, there's the Old Hag, right? Connected to sleep paralysis.
Exactly. The Old Hag syndrome, especially known in places like Newfoundland. It's the classic explanation for sleep paralysis. This malevolent old woman creeps up your bed, sits on your chest, paralyzes you with fear. And what's interesting is how people today explicitly link the Old Hag and the Hat Man and hooded figures directly to modern shadow people sightings. It's like the same core experience wearing different cultural clothes.
And Native American traditions. Lots of spirit entities there, too.
Oh, absolutely. Rich traditions of spirits, beings that move between worlds. You have shapeshifters like the Skinwalker, terrifying figures like the Wendigo, the elusive hide-behind that you can never see directly. While maybe not a direct one-to-one shadow person, the lore is full of powerful, often unseen or partially seen entities connected to nature or other realms. Some experiencers today feel a connection there.
So seeing these parallels across so many different cultures, different times, what does that tell us?
Well, it's pretty significant, isn't it? You have this widespread recurrence. Dark, often humanoid shapes. Featureless, often linked with fear or sleep states. It strongly suggests one of two things, really. Either there's a universal way our human brains, our neurology or psychology, react under certain conditions, maybe stress or half sleep, and it produces similar imagery worldwide, or there's some kind of underlying external phenomenon that's genuinely being observed, and each culture just interprets it through its own lens, its own myths.
And the intent seems to vary too, right? In the old stories and the new ones, some seem malicious, others just
observe it. Precisely. That spectrum from evil entities to neutral observers, even occasionally helpful ones, is consistent. If they are external, maybe that means there isn't just one type of shadow person, different species, different motives. Or, if internal, it shows how much our own psychological state, our fear or lack of it, shapes how we perceive the experience.
Which brings us to modern times, the internet age. Suddenly, people aren't alone with these experiences anymore.
Exactly. Platforms like Reddit, TikTok, they've become huge repositories for personal accounts. Someone posts a terrifying story and dozens, hundreds of people reply, "Me too, I thought I was the only one." It's created a massive shared narrative.
And that's where figures like the Hat Man really take off, I suppose.
Definitely. The Hat Man is a prime example. Tall, dark, that wide-brimmed hat or fedora. It's reported so consistently across cultures, often linked to sleep paralysis. People say they feel him staring even without a face. That specificity, the hat, is really striking.
But it does raise that tricky question, doesn't it? Is the consistency because it's a real, shared phenomenon that the internet helps us recognize? Or is it more like a cultural contagion? You read about the Hat Man, you see a shadow, and your brain helpfully fills in the hat because you're primed for it.
That's the million-dollar question of the digital age. It makes distinguishing between shared narratives and shared reality much harder.
Let's look at a specific account, maybe. Something that shows the variety.
Okay, yeah. There's one from a Reddit user, Octumbleweed8268. They shared a childhood story. So they were stuck on a fence, kind of blacking out, and then someone, in their word, grabbed them, pulled them off, set them down gently.
Someone. Like a person.
Well, here's the description. Pitch black, tall, maybe 5'5" to 6'3", they estimated. Made absolutely no sound, had no smell. And the movement. They described it as walking like an NPC in GTA.
Like a video game character. Unnatural movement.
Exactly. Kind of programmed, robotic, not quite fluid or human. And this being was helpful, or at least neutral. Not scary in intent, just strange.
Wow. That's really different from the usual dread-filled encounter, but it still has that pitch black quality, the silence.
Yeah, that highlights the range.
Yeah.
But looking across many accounts, some common threads do emerge among the people who see them.
Like what?
Well, many report feeling intense emotions around the time of the sighting, fear, obviously, but also anger, sadness. Significant life stress is often a factor. Things like domestic abuse situations, grieving a death in the family, sleep deprivation comes up constantly, and sleep paralysis, of course.
And some people think these things feed on that.
That's a theory you hear a lot from experiencers themselves, that these entities are drawn to negative emotions, to vulnerability, that they somehow feed off fear.
Which sounds terrifying. It sets up this awful feedback loop, doesn't it? You're scared. Maybe that attracts them or makes you see them, which makes you more scared.
It's incredibly distressing, regardless of whether the feeding idea is literal or metaphorical for the psychological impact. It definitely highlights why addressing underlying stress, sleep issues, emotional health is so important for people having these experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. What about kids? You hear stories about children seeing them more often.
That's another recurring theme. The idea that children might be more open, more receptive. Some accounts suggest kids see things, but if adults dismiss it, they learn to suppress it, to tune it out as they get older, conditioned by society. Makes you wonder about perception and belief, doesn't it?
It really does. Okay, so we have these widespread accounts, historical parallels, but science has explanations too, right? Things happening inside our own heads.
Absolutely, and these scientific perspectives are really crucial for understanding the phenomenon. They suggest many sightings might stem from the amazing and sometimes glitchy workings of our brains and bodies.
So top of the list is probably sleep paralysis.
Definitely one of the most common and well-understood explanations. We touched on it with the Old Hag. Basically, your brain is partly awake, but your body muscles are still in REM sleep paralysis. That disconnect is disorienting. Your mind, trying to make sense of it, can generate hallucinations, often a sense of presence, pressure on the chest, and seeing shadowy shapes. Plus, the amygdala, your fear center, is highly active in REM sleep. So you get terror overlaid onto the hallucination and paralysis. It feels incredibly real and threatening.
Okay, that makes sense for experiences around sleep. What about seeing them when you're wide awake?
Well, then something like pareidolia could be at play.
Pareidolia, that's seeing faces in clouds, right? Or the man in the moon.
Exactly. Our brains are pattern recognition machines, hardwired to spot familiar shapes, especially human-like forms and faces. It's a survival instinct, spot the predator in the bushes quickly. So, in low light, or with ambiguous shapes, a coat on a chair, complex shadows, our brain might overinterpret and see a humanoid figure where there isn't one, especially if we're already feeling anxious or tired.
Right, just the brain doing its pattern matching thing a bit too well.
Then there's the influence of substances. Altered brain states can definitely trigger these kinds of visions. We know, for instance, that people experiencing stimulant psychosis, often from methamphetamine abuse after long periods without sleep, frequently report seeing shadow people. Very common hallucination in that context. Also, certain deliriant drugs, like high doses of deuteranhydramine Benadryl, are notorious for causing encounters with terrifying shadow people.
And even just extreme fatigue without drugs.
Yeah, severe sleep deprivation alone can cause microsleeps, waking dreams, hypnagogic or hypnopompic hallucinations, those occurring just as you fall asleep or wake up. Shadowy figures can certainly feature in those.
Okay, and what about underlying mental health conditions?
That's another important factor to consider. Visual hallucinations can be a symptom of conditions like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, and these might manifest as shadowy figures, especially in peripheral vision. Also think about anxiety disorders or PTSD. People with these conditions can be in a state of hypervigilance. Their threat detection system is on high alert. This state, combined with maybe altered brain chemistry during sleep, could lead to more intense and frightening sleep paralysis hallucinations.
And there's a psychological angle too. Jung's shadow self.
Right, Carl Jung's concept. It's more metaphorical, perhaps, but interesting. He talked about the shadow as the unconscious, repressed parts of our personality, things we dislike or hide about ourselves. Jung suggested that if we don't acknowledge our shadow, it can get projected outward. We might perceive these rejected parts of ourselves as external threats or dark figures. It's like our own inner darkness taking on a perceived external form.
So, putting all that science together, it seems like our brains are pretty capable of creating these experiences internally.
It certainly points that way. Sleep paralysis, pareidolia, substances, mental health, psychological projection. They all show how our internal state dramatically shapes our perception. It shifts the focus, doesn't it? From what's definitely out there to how does my brain interpret stimuli or lack thereof, especially under certain conditions. Our reality is very much constructed internally.
It's not necessarily one single cause then, but maybe a mix of factors.
Exactly. It's likely a complex interplay. Your sleep state, your brain chemistry, your stress levels, cognitive biases like pareidolia, maybe environmental factors like lighting. It all converges, which also suggests that managing those factors, better sleep, stress reduction, mental health support, could potentially reduce or stop the experiences for some people.
Okay, the scientific explanations are compelling. They cover a lot of ground. But for some people, their experiences just don't seem to fit neatly into those boxes, right? They feel it's something external, which leads us into paranormal territory.
Precisely. And while science offers plausible mechanisms, many experiencers feel those explanations don't fully capture the nuances or the sheer strangeness of what they encountered, so they look for answers beyond the conventional.
So what are some of the main paranormal theories? Ghosts, maybe?
That's often the first go-to. Shadow people as a type of ghost or spirit.
Yeah.
But like we said, they usually look different from the typical misty white lady type of ghost. They're dark, featureless. So if they're ghosts, maybe they're spirits in a different state. Trapped, perhaps, only able to manage a shadowy form. Some even wonder if they could be non-threatening spirits, maybe loved ones appearing differently.
Okay, what about something more exotic, like from other dimensions?
Ah, the interdimensional hypothesis. This one's popular. The idea is they're visitors, or maybe just glimpses, from parallel realities or different dimensions coexisting with ours. Their strange behavior phasing through walls, vanishing instantly, could be because they're not fully synced with our physical laws or timeline. They're just briefly intersecting with our reality.
And that fits with the observer idea too, doesn't it?
It does. Many accounts describe them as just watching, not interacting, just observing. If they're interdimensional, maybe they are observers, researchers, tourists, time travelers catching glimpses, or maybe beings that exist parallel to us but don't usually interact. It opens up huge questions about their purpose, their origins, if this theory holds any water. And again, maybe different types with different intentions.
This is starting to bend reality quite a bit. What about connections to, like, quantum physics ideas?
Yeah, things get even more speculative here. Some people try to link it to concepts like quantum consciousness or the many worlds interpretation.
Yeah.
The idea, put simply, is maybe our reality is just one slice or shadow of a much larger, more complex multiverse. And perhaps consciousness itself isn't confined to one reality. Maybe it's smeared across possibilities, allowing for brief glimpses, shadows from adjacent timelines or dimensions.
Whoa, so like we're seeing bleed through from another universe.
That's the gist of that line of thinking. It gets connected sometimes to things like the Mandela effect, those collective false memories. Is the Mandela effect just memory playing tricks? Or is it evidence of merging timelines, glitches in reality? Could shadow people be another type of glitch, another sign of interdimensional overlap?
That's a massive leap from just seeing a spooky shadow. It reframes reality itself.
It absolutely does. It moves way beyond simple ghosts and into fundamental questions about the nature of reality, consciousness, and the cosmos. It's where science fiction, theoretical physics, and paranormal investigation kind of blur together.
Are there other paranormal factors people look at, like EMF fields?
Yes, electromagnetic fields, EMF. That's a staple in ghost hunting. The theory is that spirits or entities might disrupt the natural EMF environment, causing spikes on meters. So some investigators look for EMF fluctuations around reported shadow people sightings. Of course, skeptics point out tons of mundane things create EMF fields, like wiring and appliances, but it's part of the toolkit for some.
Gotcha. Can we talk about another account? Maybe one where multiple people saw the same thing. That seems harder to dismiss.
Good point. Shared experiences are often seen as more compelling evidence for an external phenomenon. There was that Reddit account we mentioned earlier, where multiple family members, the user, their wife, brother, cousin, all independently reported seeing the same big, dark, adult, human-esque, slightly transparent blobs in the same hallway of their parents' house.
Yeah.
Over time. They weren't interactive, just sort of there, waddling or standing. The fact that several people saw the same specific thing in the same place adds a layer of intrigue.
It really does. What about how the person reacts? Does that change things?
Potentially. There's another interesting account from Reddit. Someone said they used to see shadow people every night when they were depressed. But eventually, they consciously decided to stop being scared. They'd even talk to the shadow saying, "I'm not afraid." And they reported that sometimes after doing that, they started seeing fully formed figures instead of just shadows, as if their emotional state, their lack of fear, actually changed the manifestation.
Wow. That suggests the experiencer has some influence, maybe.
It's a fascinating possibility. Or maybe it just changed their perception of the manifestation. Hard to say. And then you get accounts with a spiritual angle for resolution.
Like what?
Well, there was one story about a mother whose kids kept seeing shadows at night, screaming about them. Eventually, the mother saw them too. She called her pastor, who believed a witch must have opened a portal. That was his interpretation. He came and anointed the house with oil, prayed throughout, and according to the account, the family never saw the shadow people again after that.
So whether you see that as a psychological effect of belief, providing comfort and agency, or a genuine spiritual intervention, it highlights how deeply personal belief systems interact with these experiences.
Absolutely. It shows how people find ways to cope and regain a sense of control, which is vital when dealing with something so unsettling.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground. Ancient myths, modern accounts, brain science, wild paranormal theories.
It's clear that shadow people remain this incredibly persistent, deeply perplexing mystery, doesn't it? From folklore to quantum physics, they keep showing up.
And regardless of the true explanation, if there even is one single explanation, the impact on the people who experience this is undeniable. That fear, that sense of intrusion, that rush with the unknown. It's profoundly real for them, and it's important we approach these stories with empathy.
Definitely. And it's not that uncommon to feel you've had experiences science can't easily explain. Some surveys suggest, around 19% of U.S. adults say they've seen a ghost, and maybe 70% feel they've had some kind of unexplained paranormal event. It shows how widespread these feelings are.
So the big question remains, hanging in the air.
Collective delusion born of fear and pattern-seeking brains, or genuine glimpses of beings from beyond our reality. Maybe the truth isn't strictly one or the other. Perhaps it's in that complex, fascinating intersection of mind, matter, maybe culture, and the parts of the universe we just don't understand yet. As they say, the absence of proof isn't proof of absence.
Well said.
Yeah.
And that's a perfect place to bring our listeners in. We really want to hear from you.
Yeah.
Have you ever encountered a shadow person, the Hat Man? What's your take on all this? Share your stories, your theories with us on social media. Use the hashtag Mi Mind MashUps. Let's keep this conversation going.
Yes, please do. And thank you all for joining us on this particular deep dive into the shadows. It's been illuminating in a dark sort of way. Don't forget to like and subscribe or follow My Mind MashUps wherever you listen so you don't miss our next exploration. You can find us on Amazon Music, Audible, Facebook, Pocket Casts, Spotify, and YouTube.
Until next time, keep your minds open and maybe keep your lights on, just in case.